Faces.
How's it going, Jim?
Very well, thanks, Justin. How are you?
Doing great. Another day in paradise. Looking forward to our farmer office hours today.
Yes, indeed.
Wait another minute or two, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today with our farmer office hours. Obviously, I wanted to first thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Now, as always, we're continuing to try and improve our community events. This one in particular, with our farmer office hours, we're hoping to provide a really good venue for you all to really have a space to discuss farming. Ask questions, raise concerns, maybe give some ideas for improvements or changes that we could make, and really just kind of have a good, in-person, I guess, not in-person, but over voice, community interaction about our farming side of things. Today, I'm joined by Jim. How's it going, Jim?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Justin. Great to be here. If anyone doesn't know, I'm head of ecosystem at Subspace. I came up through the ambassador program, but before that, I was a farmer, just like everyone else. My favoured tool, it was Docker, but I'm kind of moving over to Pulsar more and more. But I'm more than happy to look at any problems or hear any questions about any flavour of Node, really. But yeah, stoked to be here.
Definitely. And as you all know, I'm Justin, the community support manager. I personally prefer Pulsar as well. Never been a huge fan of Docker, but maybe that's just because it always fights me on my Windows installation. But it's been great to see how the farming experience has evolved over time, and we just want to kind of continue to nudge that along. As you've all seen, we've had various updates kind of coming out over the past couple weeks. So always keep an eye on our announcement channel as well. We'll have more updates coming down the line, and obviously more announcements as we approach our incentivized testnet and hopefully mainnet beta. As we are in farmer office hours, feel free to throw any questions you have into the side channel, or you can also raise your hand and we'll bring you up to the stage and you can ask your questions over voice as well. To start, we'll just kind of recap some of the high-level statistics about Gemini 3F so far. Jim, did you want to take it away?
Sure. So exciting times, of course. with the new network launched very recently. We are, as of right now, we are at 1,536 nodes operational up on Gemini 3F. In the last week, we've released 3 software updates addressing bugs and issues and enhancing the user experience, which is quite a pace when you compare it to 3E. We appreciate the community following along with us while 3E was not performing as well as we'd hoped. But 3F is up and seeming strong. So our plan is to continue refining Gemini 3F. We've got various upgrades and fixes coming up. We are still hoping to share a roadmap explaining what the features are, and where they slot in as we approach mainnet beta. Exciting times, because our aim is to transition Gemini 3F into the incentivized testnet. And we have also, attentive farmers will already know this, but we also got some exciting competitions. We've got Stake Wars and Space Race a little bit further down the line, and culminating in the launch of mainnet beta, which is going to be exciting. And Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about proof of time?
Yeah, proof of time is actually one of the important kind of metrics and discussions that we need to have as we kind of get closer to mainnet. As you all know, we have kind of 2 pathways that we've mentioned. So we have our optimistic or pessimistic verification for our proof of time. Now, there are some trade-offs either way, but this is something the engineering team is trying to get to a final decision on. So I'm sure you may have seen some other announcements in the past trying to get your guys' thoughts and feedback. We're still continuing to try and get any insights you all may have. I just posted the forum posts that we have for this proof of time analysis, and feel free to just be as honest or brutal as you want, in those responses, because we genuinely are looking to help make these kinds of decisions with the community. And we do feel that, especially in the case of proof of time, with optimistic versus pessimistic verification, it's definitely a community decision and not just one for our engineers to make behind closed doors. So check out our forum post. Feel free to ask any follow-up questions, post any responses or any insights you may have, or just flat out tell us if you think that, neither one is a good step, because any feedback is definitely helpful as far as these kinds of things go. And obviously, it's a vital step in ensuring that our network is secure in the long run. It's just one of those various different pieces to the puzzle in making, a great scalable blockchain.
There's actually, Yamon has posted rather kindly TLDR to TLDR. I think it's in the announcements channel, where you can go and see a real brief overview of what we're talking about here. So proof of time and optimistic and pessimistic is quite it is a heavy subject. But if you want to get like a 20-second gist of what we're asking, head over there and you can cast your vote with an emoji. We are very keen to hear our community feedback, because it is something that is core to the protocol. We are eco-friendly, and we'd love to hear your feedback to make sure that you feel that we are aligned with our mission there. So yeah, encourage everyone, and if you're able to follow the deep maths, we'd really love to hear feedback on the forum post. Thoughtful feedback is what we thrive on within the project. So yeah, just can't encourage you guys enough to get involved with our proof of time question.
Definitely. And also it's just kind of the start of our decentralized governance, and eventually handing some of these things off to the community even more so. Speaking of handing things off to our community, I did want to take some time to acknowledge our ambassadors. As we've been launching into our various versions of testnet over these past couple months, our ambassadors have been absolutely amazing in providing additional support and just being here to ensure all of you and all of the other community members are able to get up and running. I'm sure you all have seen the various different names in Discord, but they really are here to empower you all and ensure you all are taken care of. And I can say from my perspective, they've definitely been helping a lot when it comes to, ensuring that people get support questions answered and that there's no long delays or anything along those lines and any questions that you all may have. So make sure to show your support to them as well if you ever see them in Discord. And as always, we do continue to recruit for our ambassador program. So if that's something you're interested in as well, we definitely are still looking for applicants as we move along. So before we, as we mentioned, we do want to get into some questions from all of you farmers and everything. So you can start throwing those out, raising your hands and questions. We did want to run through a couple of just the common issues that we've seen. We've tried to do our best to keep track of like the FAQs and kind of common issues in our Master Gemini 3F information thread. So you can always check that thread out as well if you have any questions or feel like, maybe you've seen this issue before and don't feel like it's not that big of a problem or something along those lines, that would be a good place to check. So just in the sake of, making sure we're all on the same page, we'll run through a couple of those ones and start going into community questions from there. Jim, did you want to start off?
Sure, I'm going to skip to number 2. So we often see this question about the finalized block. It can be stuck at 0 or it can be below chain head. And we quite often see people asking, they think that their node's not working correctly because they're not seeing the finalized block increasing. So Gemini 3 doesn't use finalization in the same way as maybe some other substrate chains that you've seen previously, or any other chain for that matter. And actually, it's fine. There is a kind of a foible of Gemini of the software at the moment, actually, where if you restart your node, you will actually see your finalized block drop back to 0. You won't necessarily see it rise after that. So recently we had a question from the community about why on telemetry, for example, you might see that there's a bunch of nodes in sync, but not having a finalized block, or having, a different finalized block. And yeah, the explanation is that we at the moment, Subspace doesn't use it in the same way as other projects. There's nothing to worry about. So yeah, as long as your best is increasing, and you're in and the node is logging that it's in sync, you're good.
Definitely. And that is one thing that a little bit different from some other blockchains that you may have used in the past. Another issue that we've been seeing pop up here and there has just been the maximum number of streams reached. This one is luckily not too much of a concern. This is more so just a warning error from libp2p, which is a peer-to-peer library that's used within our protocol, just notifying you that you've reached, as the error mentions, the maximum number of streams. Ultimately, as long as you're still connected to peers and still seeing blocks downloaded and updated, you should have no major concerns as far as that issue goes for the time being. Though we will mention that we are taking a look to see how we can get that error to be less annoying, if you will, and blocking of your other useful logs within your terminal. Additionally, one that we've been seeing come through is a divide by 0 error. This error, and it roughly says, attempt to calculate the remainder with a divisor of 0. Ultimately, this one is caused by releasing an old or running an old build. As we've mentioned, we have gone through lots of different versions over this past week, and we will anticipate to do that moving forward. As such, you're likely to start running into various different problems on those older versions if you keep running them. Luckily, we've been able to do these upgrades to be non-breaking, meaning maybe you might have to wipe your plot from August 18th, the very oldest release, but moving forward, the rest of those releases, you shouldn't have had to wipe any plots or anything along those lines. So it's a pretty seamless upgrade, especially in the case of using Pulsar, which is even more of a seamless user experience.
Did you cover the number of streams? Sorry, I was typing, Justin.
Yes, I did. Yeah, so I went through 3 and 4 there. If you wanted to pick up at 5.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, okay, I like this one. So, people have seen that there's a new message in the logs about replotting. Sector replotted successfully. So initially, this was causing some consternation. It's a new thing. It's introduced with 3F. So, replotting is an interesting subject. As more data is added to the network, but farmers have their plots built. We need a way to distribute that new data to make sure that we've got an equal distribution of all the data across all the farmers. So what that means is that after a certain amount of time, a sector, which is a chunk of your plot, the data that you're storing for the network, actually expires. And once it expires, we will see this replotting process occur, and you will get a log message explaining that the sector has replotted successfully. And what that means is that you've just helped the network by storing fresh data. So yeah, nothing to be concerned about. Now I see we've got, I'm going to guess that's El Padrino as asked to speak. So do you want to come up on the stage? You may need to unmute. I'm not sure why you're not appearing.
He may have lowered his hand. But as mentioned, feel free to throw out any questions or raise your hands if you guys have any questions. We're happy to answer any. We're just kind of running through the common ones for now, but we'd love to hear any more of the more difficult or more pressing questions that you all may have.
Yeah, written. You don't have to come on and join us on stage. We like written questions as well. Okay, so what makes the plots unique? Is it the reward address? I can say with authority that it's not the reward address, because I know that I can change my node's reward address with a restart, and it will continue farming to the new address. I believe a key is generated and linked to, I'm going to say the node, although I'm waiting for a correction, which means you can't transfer the plot to another machine without that key. But the reward address doesn't make it unique. Justin, do you know, is it the key that gets generated with your node?
So I think the key is generated just on the farmer side. It's not necessarily connected to the node. In the past, it used to be connected to your reward address, and this caused some complications. So we did kind of separate that up into being separate, reference models. Ultimately, the plot though is completely unique, as the way that we discipline and kind of moderate some farmers and plots is by checking that unique key and ensuring that there's not multiple of them on the network. So for example, if you were to run, get a plot going and then copy that plot and then run it again on a different farmer, so same plot file running on 2 farmers, your plot would be burned entirely. So because it would detect that unique key is on the network in 2 different instances, and in which case would burn the plot entirely. Obviously, so we do not encourage doing something like that, just because it does open up a security vulnerability, which is why those plots get burned off of the network, because it could be an attack vector. But it used to be the reward address. Now it is its own unique, farmer plot key, if you will.
Thanks for that clarification, Justin. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions from, I'm not going to try Tranding. So estimation about the time of incentivized testnet. So I'm not sure if you're asking about the length of incentivized testnet or when it's going to start. We do have an idea of when the incentivized testnet is going to start, and I am going to recommend that you keep an eye out on the announcements channel. And I think, Trending, you asked me yesterday about a public sale in the general chat. Again, I don't have details to share with you about that at this time. Rest assured, the community are going to know as soon as we have that information locked down and available.
Obviously, okay. We'll be, like most of our Discord community, we always try to share those kinds of updates with you all first here. Because we see this as kind of the front lines, if you will. P3 had asked if we can or can't move the plots to a different machine. Yes, you can move the plot, but as Nazar mentioned, just running the same plot in 2 places at the same time is what you want to avoid. So if you take the plot from machine A, or take your farmer from machine A, shut it down, transfer it to machine B, and then turn it back on, that's great. What you can't do is take your farmer plot from machine A, copy it, leave it running on machine A, and then also run it on machine B. What you would want to do is generate a new plot on machine B. That way there's no duplication of those plots, and then as a result, there's no burning of your plots, which is obviously, as far as the CPU cycles and read and write perspective comparatively. So that's really the main thing you want to look out for.
And that makes perfect sense, that the key is attached to the plot as well, of course. So I was wrong when I mentioned that it could be the node.
Definitely, and we did have it linked to the node in some of the older versions, but luckily with some of the great work that the development team done, I believe those are pretty much completely decoupled at this point.
Okay, so let's take another common issue, shall we, Justin, while we wait for some more questions to roll in?
Definitely.
So we have also been asked about a recovering missing piece failed error. So this is actually quite nuanced, isn't it? This is actually related to the switch to the very latest version. So that's the 25th of August v2 or 0.6.4 of Pulsar. And what that building brought us is farmers on the new version can't communicate with farmers on the old version. So what that means is that we've got the new farmers are trying to request data from the network, but maybe they're connected to the majority of farmers running the old version. So this is a great example, actually, where we need the community to help us by upgrading expediently. So we are trying to, or we want to introduce like a criticality or a priority on our releases. So if there's something that's going to affect if staying on the old version is going to affect the network detrimentally, we ask our community to upgrade with us as soon as possible. So there are some mitigation strategies. What you can do is you can increase the number of connections that you try and make. So increase the size of the pool of farmers that you connect to, in the hope that you connect to more farmers on the same version as you. And the details of exactly how to do that are in the Gemini 3F information post that Justin put in the chat just a bit further up. And I believe actually that was a solution suggested by one of our technical ambassadors. And again, massive shout outs to our support ambassadors. I see that although we're getting more users, we're not seeing a big kind of uptick in forum support posts, which I think is testament to those guys managing to answer the queries in Discord, which is a great thing to see. We're super impressed with everyone who helps our farmers. Okay. Okay, question for the developer. Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry, Justin, go on.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just going to say, so yeah, it looks like Lazy Penguin has a question for us. What is the maximum size of plots you have tested in version 3F? And what is the normal average plot synchronization speed? And he has a follow-up question on, I saw a section on stacking on GitHub, and when is it planned to be implemented? Well, I can't speak on the last one. You'll have to ask Jeremy or Nazar. Maybe they can jump up and give you a quick insight on that one. As far as the maximum size of plots we've seen in 3F, let's see. So I can say that the largest that I think I've seen a community member run so far is maybe 70 or 80 terabytes. So far, they seem to be having good success with those larger plots. Obviously, plotting does take some time on those ones. The synchronization speed, it's hard to give an exact estimate, but I can say that a couple of the larger farmers I've seen finish in about 5 to 6 days. Those are 50 terabyte plus farmers. Whereas on the smaller side, a 10 terabyte you can expect to generally finish in about 1 to 2 days, depending on the speeds of your SSD. Obviously, it's completely subjective to your P2P connection, the speed of your SSD and your processor, the capacity of your RAM. So it's hard to give you an exact metric, and this is something we're still kind of really measuring and testing out. So if you would all, feel free to throw out, the timings that these kinds of things take you. It would definitely help provide us with some additional insight, on various broad machines and different configurations. Because we can only test on our machines, and then, in some cases, we see a significant change between the experience we see on a small machine versus an enterprise-grade machine, and so on and so forth. Jim, I know you've been using your farmer a lot as well. What's been your experience so far?
So I feel massively inadequate when I tell everyone that my largest plot is 1 terabyte. I feel quite extravagant with that, but I know that there has been an issue. I think it's more of an OS issue with being able to address a certain feature within the operating system. Some guys have managed to work out that around 63 terabytes starts to cause some issues on some operating systems. In fact, I think if you search Discord for 63T, you'll probably find the thread where it's discussed. Very interesting, and again, one of our ambassadors spent a lot of time kind of really zeroing in on where the bottleneck was. It's an interesting conversation. Something I can speak to is what is the average plot synchronization speed. So it seems to be pretty consistently about 4 minutes a sector, so about 4 minutes a gigabyte. I know that we've had some comments about, I don't think it's Gemini 3F doesn't seem to be working as well as Gemini 3E because that process takes longer. I believe they were talking about maybe 1 minute 39, something like that, for a sector on 3E. But you have to remember that 3F is quite a different beast to 3E. We've introduced a lot of new features. We're kind of, as the implementation grows and we become feature complete for mainnet beta, the amount of work that's done by the farmer changes. So that's how we have that's why we have the difference in plotting speeds. But yeah, 4 minutes a sector seems to be kind of consensus for everyone that I've spoken to, and certainly is my experience as well. I'm afraid I'm not sure what stacking means. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about the stacking on GitHub, I'm afraid. We can take that away though. I'll make a note. See if we can get back to you, Lazy Penguin. You always got the good questions.
Definitely. Maybe he meant staking?
Okay. Yeah, okay. So staking is it's definitely something on GitHub. So staking is I don't want to drag us too far off track, but staking is a feature of domains and the operators who execute transactions on those domains. There should be a video of I don't know if any kind farmer or listener would drop the link to the YouTube video, but there was a community call recently where I talk a bit about staking domains, running an operator, execution, and of course nomination, which is where farmers will be able to get involved at scale. So yeah, I will try and follow up with that video if I can find it. But yeah, staking, that makes a lot more sense.
I got it posted for us there in the chat. That was the last community call that we all ran that Jim was referring to.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, it should be about halfway through, I'd say.
Definitely, and obviously, as Jim mentioned, we'll have some more details to come for that as well here in the coming weeks.
Okay,
are the plots good for mainnet or just testnet?
That's a great question, P3. So current plots are plots that you're building now on Gemini 3F won't be the plots that will work on mainnet, because again, in that community call we kind of explained that the Gemini 3 testnet is going to go on longer than previous testnets, and there are going to be resets, which is something we haven't done before. We've previously run testnets on the same network, but we are planning some upgrades. We are planning to do less intrusive forkless runtime upgrades, but we will definitely be switching to at least a 3G, but that doesn't mean it's time to burn your plots and go home, of course, because we will be starting the incentivized testnet on 3F. That's something that we confirmed recently. So if you have a 3F plot up and running, keep that guy going. You'll be able to earn real tokens, based on the current version of the network. Hopefully that answers your question, P3.
But like you mentioned, there will probably be at least one upgrade to get to mainnet, which may likely require some kind of replot. But that is also the good thing, was that we'll be having lots of improvements and changes that come along with those ways. Like we mentioned, one of those things being staking and operators, which I think will be a fun new side of things for all of you guys who have been farming for so long. We'll kind of give you another opportunity as well to gain some Subspace credits in a different way.
Absolutely. New ways to interact with the network, new ways to earn incentives. Absolutely. Exciting times ahead. Again, we do introduce many of those concepts in that community call just above, so feel free to have a listen. And any questions you've got, feel free to catch us in Discord. We're about all the time.
Definitely. So one last of the common issues that we've been seeing is the invalid solution received error. So this one comes up, it'll pop up and say invalid solution received for slot blank, sector expired. It kind of goes on into some other issues. This error is okay to ignore for now. This error results when you're plotting and the DSN is unable to retrieve a piece for a section that still remains to be plotted. So imagine you're plotting a sector 1 through 1000, and you just can't get plot number 642 or plot section 642 within that. So ultimately, it can be ignored. I will mention it's one of those errors that you actually do not want to restart your farmer. Restarting your farmer will kind of reset that sector process, and in which case, obviously, you're just kind of back to square one as far as your farmer trying to re-download those pieces. So for the time being, just kind of let it keep running. The engineering team is aware of this minor issue and working on some optimizations. But as we mentioned, it kind of is also one of those things that may be popping up in conjunction to having some outdated nodes. So as always, make sure we get our farmers and plots updated because if you're still on like the August 18th version, for example, your DSN will slowly start to start crashing and having some other issues. Like we have a couple follow-up questions. Trandon is asked, when exactly is mainnet beta? Please elaborate. Do you want to try and take that one, Jim?
Yeah, so synchronizing on multiple machines with different plot volumes. Yeah, a few days. Dependency of rewards on plot size. So yeah, absolutely. The larger the plot size, the more rewards you should be able to claim. So I mean, it's not just plot size. Obviously, if you're running it via through a 56K modem, you're going to have a bottleneck there. If you're running it on a Raspberry Pi, you're going to have a bottleneck on the CPU. There are other factors, but let's say everything else being equal, if I'm running a 100 gig plot and Justin is running a 1 terabyte plot, we would expect that Justin would get 10 times the amount of rewards that I get. So you're suggesting that there's no linear dependence on the number of rewards on the size of plots. Okay, so Penguin, sounds like maybe you've got something else going on there. Yeah, okay, so you're going to follow up with some data. So I guess so I would potentially be looking to make sure that your farmer logs look healthy. And also I wonder what kind of connection you're using. Okay, so 68K modem. But yeah, I mean, we're interested, Lazy Penguin. Get us some logs to look at. That's the first thing. We like them as text, not screenshots. They're incredibly difficult to work with. They're not searchable, so we can't find the issue later on when someone pops up, and we can start identifying a pattern. We don't mind huge log files if you can get them to us, zipped up ideally. But generally, the more logs you can get us, the better. But more than happy to take a look at your problem. That certainly isn't the behavior that we would expect.
We had one question above that as well, which was, what exactly is mainnet beta? Please elaborate.
Okay, so we have a roadmap which so at the moment we're in our testnet phase, and that will evolve into mainnet beta, and then further down the line there's going to be mainnet omega. So really what that means is that it's the feature set involved. We are working on a document that we're going to publish to explain what those features are, but at a very high level they're stages of the project, including different feature sets. Hopefully that makes sense. I realize that I'm being a little bit vague there, but as Justin mentioned earlier, so proof of time, for example, would be a feature, replotting would be a feature, and there's a different feature set between mainnet beta, which is we have like a minimum number of things that need to, or sorry, bag of things that need to be implemented for our consensus to be secure, for farmers to be robust, say, at which point we can trigger mainnet beta. But then we also have mainnet omega further down the line, which introduces additional features. I feel like I've said features an awful lot there, because I can't give you an exact roadmap at the moment, so I can't reel off a list of them at the moment, I'm afraid. We do understand and we appreciate that there's an appetite from the community to get some visibility into that, and we are working on some documentation internally, so keep your eyes open. Great question, Trending.
looks like we got a couple other questions being typed out. Also, remember, you can always raise your hand and feel free to come up to the stage and ask any questions that you have as well. Righty. Zero asks, what's the best way to make sure my farmer is running okay? As TSSC is not distributed at the moment, it's kind of hard to tell. On that one, I think your best option when it comes to making sure your farmer is running okay. Step one, you want to make sure your node is syncing. Making sure it's keeping up to date with that latest block. You're not falling behind. Ensuring that you have peer connections, meaning you're connected to the network to various different ways. And additionally, making sure that your farmer is progressing as well. As long as you're not seeing any major errors, it's not stalling anywhere. You should see it continue to process along. You can also check for votes and block rewards in your logs as well. While you aren't getting TSSC, there's still the voting and block reward process going on the back end, or block proposal process, I guess would be a better way to put it when rewards are disabled. So you can still look for those kinds of log outputs as well. Or as Jim mentioned, any replotting logs or anything along those lines is a good sign that you're still chugging along. Really what you don't want is like a halt or a freeze, if you will. All of a sudden you get stuck at block XXX for some reason. Or, same thing on the plotting side, that's when you may want to, investigate and see if something else is going on. Me personally, what I like to do is just to ensure that my node is still syncing. And as long as my node's syncing, that's just kind of my quick rudimentary check, and then I keep moving about my day. As you mentioned, it is a little bit harder to check, or easier to check when we're getting rewards, because you can just check your wallet balance and go, oh, I'm X amount richer. Versus, in these early stages, you do have to kind of check into like the core functionality, unfortunately. But luckily, so far, 3F has been much more stable than some of the past versions. So we're not seeing as many breaking changes or anything along those lines. You could also use Jim's monitoring tool, which I'm sure he would be happy to dive into a little bit as well.
Yeah, so back when I was a fresh-faced ambassador, my mini project, so this does need updating, unfortunately. It's still on 3E, I think. But back when I was a younger man and I was an ambassador, my project was to build a framework for monitoring node progress. It is Docker based, if Docker's your bag, which it certainly is mine. There's a dashboard that you can use. Feel free to take a look through the screenshots there. It should give you a flavor of what we're talking about. It's quite satisfying seeing the graph, kind of the graph slowly climb and hit the best block, hit the target block. But it also gives you some sort of high level overview of the health of your node as well. Pull requests always welcome. I will take some time to update it. Update for Gemini 3 was the last update, so let me write on a post-it note. Okay. But yeah, Viro, I'm interested to hear what do you run? Do you run Pulsar? Do you run the advanced CLI? Are you a Docker man or person, I should say? Because they do kind of have different ways to check. The thing that I like to do is check on my farmer. If I see successfully signed reward hash on my farmer, I know things are definitely good. And if I see claimed block on my node, again, that's a great indication. That's on the advanced CLI and Docker side. And then with Pulsar, you actually get a notification. I'm just trying to think. My Pulsar node is actually still syncing, but I think it might give you a notification about number of votes. I'm pretty sure it does. But yeah, certainly once rewards are activated, you'll see a TSSC figure going up there as well. And if anyone wants to submit a PR to update the monitoring stack to 3F, I'll gladly review it. If not, I will try and get to it as soon as possible. Okay, do we have any more questions from the community? As mentioned at the start, Farmer Office Hours is going to be a bi-weekly ongoing event. We're available all the time. Support is always available in Discord. I want to say 24/7. We're kind of we have people in all different time zones. Very helpful community members. Okay. When next call? Yeah, I think it's going to be in 2 weeks, but 1 hour later. So that would be 1700 UTC if I'm going the right way on my clock there.
Yes. Yep. 1700. And as Jim mentioned, we're going to try and do these farmer office hours bi-weekly, but it's not going to replace our community calls. To the next call, I will prepare hard questions. Oh, goodness, lazy penguin, we look forward to it.
Yeah, you can fall out with people, you realise. No, we appreciate the difficult ones, Penguin. Definitely.
And do we have the next community call on the agenda yet, Jim, or still getting that worked out?
We don't just yet. Keep an eye on announcements channel. It shouldn't be. Yeah, it should be announced pretty soon.
Definitely. But yeah, thank you all for coming today and asking all your questions. And as always, being here to support the Subspace network. We greatly appreciate all your feedback and are continuing to try and improve. As Jim mentioned, make sure to watch the announcements panel. We may have some fun things coming today that you all will want to see. But also stay tuned for some of our upcoming events. Some of the big ones that I'm excited for are Stake Wars and our Space Race. Finally bringing staking in operation and, a little friendly competition as far as our capacity goes. I think will be a great time. We've also been we launched our translations for our documentation on Crowdin. So we would love to see any, if you speak a second language, we would love to see any contributions to our localization. We are still working on an incentive structure for this as well. So that way we can kind of, give you all some incentives to cooperate or to work and provide localizations on our translation page. There's the guide there if anyone's interested. And we're also obviously open to feedback as well on any improvements we might be able to make to our translation process. And beyond that, if you run into any issues or any headaches, always feel free to join our Discord or our forums. Jim just linked it there for us. We try and kind of do Discord as like our level 1, and then the forums is kind of the level 2 escalated, real problematic issue you might be facing kind of thing. But overall, we're happy to help on either platform, as well as our ambassadors. And final thought, just make sure to head over to that announcements channel, and I'm sure you all find a rather exciting update on Gemini 3F. And beyond that, thank you, Jim, and thank you all for coming today.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks for the great questions. We'll speak again in 2 weeks.
Definitely.